Before there was a seminary, before there was a syllabus, before there was a degree program, there was a story. And for most of human history, that's how God's people learned, not through lectures, not through textbooks, through story, through the living word passed from one voice down to another voice and then down to another voice. So here's a question worth considering. What is the role of orality in theological education today? Today, I'm joined by Dr. Ray New, and together we explore what orality can teach us, not just about how people learn, but about how people hold Scripture, they live it out, how they pass it on, and what theological education could look like if oral learning and teaching was more deeply considered. Welcome to the podcast. It's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, Michael. Been too long.
Yeah, it's been a little while, but thank you for making the time to be with us. And Ray, I know you some. We've spent some time together at different events and talking about theological education and the whole role of orality. And I'm looking forward to where our conversation, our story here today is going to unfold and how we are able to put something together that hopefully the Lord will use for his good and the people will find useful. But I know that you have had a long journey in the area of orality. And why don't you just unpack for us and those that are watching and listening to this podcast, give us a little bit about your background and maybe how you saw, how you've seen story as vital for spiritual formation and the development of people around the world.
Wow. Big question to start with.
Yeah. we just go right into it here, right?
Right in the deep end. Let's go. Yeah. So we were on a 5-year contract to train pastors in Belize in Central America, living in the jungle. I knew the language because it was English. However, people also spoke Maya and Quechua and Creole and Garifuna and other things. And they had various education levels. In the process of teaching the 30 courses required towards ordination, I found that I was struggling. Not just I was struggling, the students were struggling. So I realized this is really a failure story. Maybe that's where a lot of good things start. I gave a take-home test one day. We're doing Christian education. I gave a take-home test with 4 questions, easy questions. 2 weeks later, I came back to that location. I asked for the papers, and nobody moved. And the Maya, they're quiet people, they're patient people, so I knew just to wait, and I waited, and nobody moved. And so finally, I asked again, so anybody have your work done? Everybody studied the floor, and I thought, oh dear. And finally, one of the ladies spoke up and said, well, brother, there's some words we did not understand. I thought, oh, okay. Internally, I'm thinking, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you text me? Why didn't you ask somebody else? Why didn't you get a dictionary? I didn't say any of that. I just thought, okay, let's find out what. So in the first question, they didn't know the word important. And I thought, I'm so much in trouble because I knew in the second question, I used the word significant. And that's what it was. In each question, there was at least one word they didn't know. So they didn't do the assignment. And, we're also teaching theology, concepts, which are deeper and harder and everything. So through a painful process there, I learned that the way I was teaching wasn't right for my audience. So I began a journey of what would help. That led me to story. That led me to a narrative theology discussions. And I began to, at the time, this was 20 years ago, there wasn't material that I could find. I would search online to find anything, but I began to convert the courses that were already approved and structured into oral-friendly hybrids. Much of that was just Bible stories with open-ended questions. And when I did that, Michael, if the class level was here, we got to story, it shot up. And it stayed there, the engagement and everything, until we finished that, and then it would drop back down. And I realized something's happening. So over that time, over those 5 years, Belize really became the learning laboratory for me for
Okay.
orality,
Okay.
and in trying different things and figuring out what's working here. And what's working was more than just students, getting to the test, but it was those pastors coming back and saying, this is working in my village. This
Wow.
is changing people in my village. Can we do more? Can we start a school in my village? And
My
I'm
goodness.
getting chills right now thinking about that because it
Yeah.
happened in several places, and it was extremely eye-opening and thrilling.
So was it that the pastors, these pastoral leaders in the villages that you were training them, right? You were giving them
Mhm.
theological education, and so on. Uh, so were they? It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like they were taking what you were giving them, and they were sort of field testing it with in the village. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, to a certain degree, it was. Maybe we could say it a little more accurately. This is reproducible for them.
Okay.
So, in teaching the courses designed by incredibly smart people, well thought out, and everything else, it just wasn't the best platform
Right.
for them to be able to repeat it back in their village. It was
Right.
awkward. It was foreign. It was difficult.
Mm,
However, when we did just stories from the scriptures, they hold the scriptures in high regard.
mm.
So that was a win. They feel that the Bible is super, super important. So to just be able to go back to their own people with a Bible story and a different way to look at it that engaged people in conversation, that was the ticket.
Okay. So the concept or idea of reproducibility,
Hmm.
if we can use that word,
Yeah.
is vital for the oral friendly hybrid type of teaching then learning that you were trying to achieve with this group. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then once you realize that what I am teaching them, if it's in a certain format, if it's in story format, they can then take that and share it with their villages.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay,
So
great.
something interesting happened. To me, it was very frustrating at first.
Yeah, yeah,
In this learning process, I would be at other meetings, and sometimes it's denominational meetings and things, and
right.
there might be a question posed to the audience, and different people would stand and give a response. And what they did, Michael, is they told a story,
Mm.
and I would listen to the story, and I'd look at the person who's moderating, and I'm looking back and forth, and I'm thinking, are they ever going to get to the point? When are they going to say, "Here's my answer"? And the
Yeah.
person would tell that story, and they would sit down, and I'm sitting there thinking, what's
Where's
going
this where's
on?
this yeah, where's this going, right? Yeah.
And others are nodding their heads. And I'm like, I am missing something.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Similar in Africa and other places where they use proverbs very well. A
Yes.
conversation might be going on, and somebody will sit there and they'll pause and they'll look around and they'll speak a proverb and they'll just say the proverb. That's all. And others
Yeah.
will nod their heads. It's like, okay, it's concluded. And and I'm going, what's concluded? What happened?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
great.
it's so
That's
powerful that there's so many things, so many truths from God that are embedded in our cultures and um, in our very beings, really, that when we pay attention to those, the communication level and understanding goes up.
yeah. Let me ask this question, Ray. I've heard often the word orality used, and I know there may be perhaps various different ways of defining what that is, or
Yeah.
how do we describe what orality is. You're using the word story. You've used the word reproducibility. You've used oral friendly hybrid here a moment ago. But um, for me and for our audience that's watching this and listening to this podcast, how would you define orality? What is your how, is there a way that we could begin to understand what orality means?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question and very, very fair also. So let's try it this way for today. Let's say that it's a non-reliance on written literature.
Non-reliance on written literature. Okay.
Beyond that, it's so many things. It is story. It is song. It is local proverbs. It is embodied experience. It is
Okay.
the stories that we've heard growing up. It is the interactions um, verbally throughout our day.
Mhm.
It's so many other things. It's not just stories, but it's so many other things. In different cultures, it shows up in proverbs and riddles. I still struggle with those.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
shows up in poetry. In some cultures, I've seen it in India, in other places where people dance a message. Again, I don't understand it. I see this guy dancing around. I have no idea what he's saying. But those around me are going, oh, yeah. I'm like, okay,
So those around, so he's doing it, they're doing a dance. They're not even using words.
no,
So the dance itself is a way of communicating ideas, concepts, truths that they want to share with the village.
yeah.
And the villagers are sitting there taking it in, and they understand what he's
I
communicating.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So it's a different language, right? It's just a different language. I don't know that language. In that
yeah,
particular case, I don't know the dance language. I don't understand the poetry language a whole lot. And the riddles leave me confused because I wasn't raised in that.
sure,
When
sure.
we're raised in a certain communication style, we get it. We don't even think about it. It just is us.
What and so I think we might be unpacking this already somewhat, but what has surprised you most as you have moved into this space of oral learning and teaching? Um, what has surprised you most as you have developed this type of practice in as a teacher?
People are smart. I mean, and the word of God is for everybody everywhere. So, like you, I went to Bible college and then continued and pursued, all the stuff until you reach your terminal degrees and all that. And I was trained in a certain way. And I thought that's how the world is because that's how I was trained. I come to find out that's not how all the world is. And I love this, and I know you do. The Bible's for everybody. So the Bible works not just in this continent, but each continent, in each culture, in each worldview. And okay, I'm getting chills again. I get so excited to see people and to listen to them unpack the story that I think I know really well through a different worldview lens. And my mind is blown. And they're staying true to the story, but they have a different worldview, value, and a different way of looking at things because they've lived their entire life in an honor shame society, and I have not. And that same story that I guarantee you I know it so well, I suddenly think, I don't know anything.
You
I
know, I
would,
tell yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I just think I'm so stupid. Somebody needs to teach me.
I tell students that we all have certain hermeneutical lenses that
Mm,
we put on,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And depending on your culture and your background, you come to the Word of God with a set of lenses
Hmm.
that will shape the way you understand and are able to read the text, the biblical text. And I share with them oftentimes in other cultures, they're going to put on different hermeneutical lenses, which
Yep,
is what you're talking about, right?
yep, yep.
So and it's not that it's not that they are revealing new revelation of the text, but it's that the text always had these things to say, but they can see them,
Exactly.
and sometimes others cannot. And so, yeah, I so much appreciate. I appreciated what you said a moment ago about people are smart,
They're so smart.
and
Mm,
sometimes when we have this background that is heavily oriented towards literature and reading and
mhm.
writing and research and so on, we think that this is the way to have knowledge and understanding,
Yeah,
and it's true.
it
But
is.
there are other ways to
It's
have
one
knowledge
way.
and understanding. Yeah, and so, and I've experienced the same thing, just traveling around
Yeah.
and interacting with people from different cultures. I walk away going, these are some bright
They're
people, right?
amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing
Yeah.
people. Um, So as you have continued with this kind of work, Ray, um, tell me, you mentioned the like the dancing and how that communicates a story and so on. What are some other examples of that? Other examples that you
Oh
can
yeah.
bring to our audience that shows how not outside of literature and writing and reading, uh, we can communicate very effectively the biblical stories, right? So
Yeah.
how else can you describe that?
So let's put two of them together. So
Sure.
in most all of our cultures, there are local proverbs, um, things that have risen up through the culture. They're short, just like they are in the book of Proverbs. They're short little expressions that carry a whole lot. Okay.
Mhm.
In the cultures, those are examples of their philosophy, and they've been there for a long time. So when we pay attention to those proverbs, we're getting insights into their theology, their philosophy, their values, their more all of these things, even their behaviors and why they're embedded in there. Those can be helpful or hurtful. There's a little
Yeah.
process that we've used. Um, Either way, we can use that to either encourage it and say, look what God put in your culture 2,000 years ago.
Right.
Or that's interesting. It reminds me of a story, and then challenge it with something from the scriptures so they
Mhm.
have an opportunity to examine it.
Mhm.
That's one. The other that is probably even more powerful is song. I'm not a
Mhm.
person to create songs so much, but in so many cultures, they just naturally do that.
Right.
And it and
Right.
it adds another level to the memory hooks, so that that story sticks with them because they've made a song connected to it, and they own it, especially when
Mhm.
they do it. They really, really own it.
Mhm.
Um, in towards the end of Deuteronomy, God taught Moses a song, and I wish they'd recorded it.
Yeah.
But he told Moses, teach this song to the people and they will remember it, and it will
Right.
remind them, and it will challenge them, and all of these things. Well, being the nerd that I am, I counted, it's 43 verses long.
Oh my.
And I'm like,
Wow.
wait a minute. God sang a song to Moses. It was 43 verses long. And then Moses was to sing it to the people so that they would remember it.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah. That's
And so
amazing.
that's also part of the difference in those who rely on literature, where we can go and open the book and read it
Right.
again, or in our case, we're going to go look it up on our phones,
Sure.
Google it or
Sure.
something. And those who have that capacity, which we all do, to retain through story and through song. Those are
Mm.
super powerful hooks. Just a couple of weeks ago, something popped in my head, and I found myself, you probably had the same experience. Suddenly, the words of a song that I hadn't heard in 3 or 4 decades were in my
Yeah.
mind, and they're very clear, and I know all the words,
Um,
and I was surprised. How do I know those words?
it's funny you say that. Just a few nights ago, I woke up and I there was a song that was going through my mind, but I hadn't heard the song in a while. But I found myself I couldn't get rid of the song. Kept going through, one of those things.
Yeah.
You mentioned local proverbs and the importance of understanding what some of the local proverbs are, because you could either come alongside
Hmm.
of the village and encourage that as a because it might have some good alignment with the biblical text,
That's
or
right.
you use something else to maybe challenge that a little bit. But here's a question I have is, how do you discover what the local proverbs are? How do
Yeah.
you come to understand what they
Yeah.
are? How does that happen, Ray?
Listen, listen, listen. So what I've found in so many places is
So
if we're going,
you don't go in and ask them, "Will you tell me what your local proverbs are?" or anything. That
yeah,
doesn't quite happen that
I
way, does
tried
it?
that in the beginning. It doesn't work that well. Yeah. When you say, "Hey, can you tell me a proverb about improving yourself?"
Yeah, blank look. Yeah,
Exactly.
crickets,
So
right? Yeah,
when
yeah.
when you're having coffee, when you're having lunch, when things are, and you listen, people are using proverbs all the time. When a topic comes up, a couple of proverbs will slip out of their mouth, and they know them. But when you ask them, "Can you tell me a proverb about poverty?" They have no idea. If they think really hard, they may find one, but they flow out all the time. So listen. At times, you can get a group together and help them through a process of finding proverbs for topics,
Yeah.
but it feels like work,
Yeah.
whereas they flow out all the time. So sometimes it's just that, it's just capturing them. The second part that's super, super important is I may hear all the words to that proverb and think I know it because I recognize all the words. It also could be an error. I need
Mhm.
to ask them, when you use this proverb, how do you use it? What does it mean for you? Great example. We had a training in Ghana, West Africa. I had with me a trainer from Kenya in East Africa. One of the Ghanaians shared a proverb, and my Kenyan friend said, "Oh, let me say what that means because I'm a son of the soil. I know this."
Oh.
And so he shared it, and the whole group shook their heads. No, no. The same proverb that lives in Kenya lives in Ghana, but in Ghana they use it opposite of the way they use it in Kenya.
Isn't that something?
Super
Wow.
important that they tell us what it means, that the context is massively important.
That is so important to say, to hear that, Ray. And just the for us as we think about theological education and training and equipping in various contexts, and those that are listening to this podcast are involved in all kinds of different equipping of
Mhm.
leaders for the church. And um, it's just fascinating, right? That because sometimes we take a continent like Africa and
Mm.
we assume that Africa is all the same.
Yes.
But
Mm.
even within even between one village to another within the same area,
Yeah,
region, you're gonna find different understandings of what
yeah,
words mean, right?
yeah,
Uh, yeah,
yeah. The context, the culture, the language, all the things can cause variables there. And so it's so important that those become some of the filters.
right,
Those, once
right.
they're understood, they also become platforms to launch from to make the education more attainable for all the local people.
Yeah, yeah,
May not work when I come back to Ohio,
right,
but it'll work wonderfully there.
right. Uh, so, help me to understand this a little bit further then, Ray, as we think about story versus, um, literature, books, writing assignments, things along those lines. Um, how do you see story shaping people differently, perhaps, than what a textbook or a written assignment might shape them? How does what is the difference between the two, if at all? So,
Yeah. Great question, especially for our context. So there are differences. One, story is more embodied. It's more a comprehensive experience. We were taught to economize. We were taught to get to the point. Like I said earlier, can this guy just say what he wants to say?
right,
Cut
right,
to it, man. You lost me
right.
with all this stuff. That's not how all of the world learns or communicates. And so story's the full package. We were taught to do theology, to take the pieces and put them together, and this is the theology of.
Right, right.
Story doesn't do that. God doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And Jesus didn't do that. And so there's things about that that the Creator knows because He made us, that stories stick. We remember them well. And a well-placed question is super powerful. And we see
Mm,
that with Jesus a lot of times. He would tell a story, he'd ask a question, and he'd walk away.
mm.
What did he do? Did he walk out on class? Did he not finish? He didn't give us the point, and there was no poem to finish and no inspirational. He knew what was happening. We have the story because it sticks. He plants that question in there, and that question just keeps swirling around until our mind and maybe our heart and spirit finds an
Right.
answer.
Right.
When we find it, it's also the joy of discovery, which is huge. It's so, so big. It's one of our major principles in orality training. We can't tell. We need to
Mhm.
lead others to it and let them find it. When they find it, they own it.
Mm.
So it's not one of the principles of Christian education. It's not about how much the teacher can teach.
Right.
It's about what the student takes home with them. And
Eh,
so this is the big, big difference. It's the flipped classroom,
yes.
and we facilitate rather than declare all the time. When we're facilitating, the students are finding it They're saying it with their mouths, which is brilliant and is so much more conducive to spiritual transformation,
Yeah.
because rather than you or me telling them, listen, I've studied this, I've got degrees, I can,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
rather than us telling them this is the point of this passage, they are finding it through their lenses, through their lives. They're naming it, they're naming their part in it. Because of all of that, the Spirit just gives them one more little nudge. They go, oh my goodness, I need to change.
Yeah.
And they tell us how. It's like, Michael, this is the easiest thing I've ever done. 40 plus years of ministry. It took me a long time to find it. I'm so glad that I failed long enough to find this. But it's also not only the easiest, it can make you nervous because
Sure.
it's different. You're facilitating and you're not always sure what people are going to say. But it's so powerful
Yeah.
because of that.
And it's a little bit uncomfortable for some to do, because, as you said earlier, many of us have been trained in very formal settings, institutions, Bible colleges, and so on and so forth, where there is a more linear approach to
Yeah.
this, and you are told where you're supposed to get to on this question. But I love what you said a moment ago about the joy of discovery,
Yeah.
right? And just seeing people, you might drop a question or two, and all of a sudden you let it sit there,
I
and let.
I
I mean,
so love that.
that's remarkable. And as you said, that Jesus modeled that so well for us in so many different ways, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, right?
For some
Um,
of us, we realize we have to, I'm thinking about verbal processors and
yes,
watching them. And so regardless of how it is, I love when you're watching people and their eyes are going up and you can see they're thinking. And then when they look at you, they got this little glow happening. You
yeah,
realize, okay, there's something there. They're ready. And for
yeah,
some, they just have to think it out. They need to talk it out in order to figure it out.
yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And when they do, and they do it in a group, it builds. So she said this, and then he added that, which makes me think, and I had neither of those thoughts before. And so the group process is even stronger. And
Mhm.
I just love every single time watching people figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Um, let's move a little bit towards trying to think about orality, story, um, and think about it in terms of, we've touched on it some, but I want to move more and more towards the topic of teaching, theological education. And as you know by now, Ray, I use the phrase theological education in a very broad
Mhm.
sense, not just to include Bible colleges and seminaries, but church-based training programs and non-formal programs and informal programs and so on. But as we think about theological education as a whole, how do you see us being able to incorporate more of the oral learning and story learning and teaching practices that we've been talking about here today? How do you see us? Because in this podcast, I try to challenge people to begin to reimagine a little bit what
Mhm.
theological education could look like, and so how would you help us think uh, through that topic a little
Yeah.
bit? Yeah.
So let me suggest a couple of things. One is that in some ways, I feel like I'm a curator of learning modalities.
Mhm.
Very helpful to pay attention to what works for this group, what works for this people group, what works for this type of learner. Professors have that every day. You've got all kinds of different learners in your classroom.
Yeah.
The world is that way too.
Sure.
And so what works for one doesn't for another. So be open to that. Intentionally structure things so that it includes more learning styles. Um, so curators of learning modalities also trust that, as we said earlier, people are smart. Let's give them
Yeah.
credit. And
Yeah.
our foundation, our content is the scriptures. Well, the
Yeah.
scriptures have everything that's needed. So if we can trust that and trust the Spirit to guide a group, then it's going to be a win-win all the way
Yeah.
around. And so one thing I think, even for our schools, if we could look beyond just teaching the student in front of us, but help equip those students for the people they're going to teach, and the people they're going to teach, 2 Timothy 2:2, will do better. We'll build stronger students who not only can pass the test next
Right.
Friday,
Right.
but they can turn around and do the reproducibility. They can teach others in their urban setting, in their village setting, and whatever it might be, because it's in them now.
Yeah.
They didn't just study for the test, they wrestled with it. And some of our schools do great with this.
Yes.
And
Yes, they do.
some, they give great opportunities to think it out and figure it out. Others just proclaim, here's the answers, here's what you got to know. So
Yeah.
in that shift, if we can do more of that, we'll end up with stronger students, especially if we keep in mind, who are my students going to minister to?
Yes.
If we can teach
Yes.
to that third and fourth generation, it'll be a lot
Yes.
stronger.
That's great. That's a great point. There's a woman by the name of Linda Connell, and she wrote about theological education quite a bit. And she said something about relocating theological education. And what she meant by that was not relocating it so much physically, but relocating the end user
Mhm.
of what you're doing in the classroom, so that the students, when you're teaching, the students are thinking about the topic in terms of where they might end up serving,
Yes.
and that's where that's how you're relocating the learning and teaching experience.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about there. Um, and it's but what we're saying is not always easy to do, is
Yeah.
it?
No.
Especially when you have a diverse set of students that might be going to different places
Mhm.
to teach and to lead and minister others. What else would you suggest then for those that are in the classroom, those that are teaching students? We're talking about more formal education now, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yep.
But what else would you suggest for them as we think about story and orality and preparing our students to be more effective out in the field somewhere? What else might
Yeah.
might you suggest? Right?
I heard a question asked one day when we were in India, when one of the facilitators looked at the group and said, after we had a discussion and everything,
Yeah.
he said, "How would you teach this?"
Mhm.
And there was a pause. And I thought, oh, this is a great question. I want to hear the
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
So I'm not African. I'm not South Asian. I'm not Latino. There's so many things I'm not, and I
Yeah.
just don't know how they would do it. But as I've watched others engage, and they just do things differently because they've been raised inside a culture. Contextualization, huge thing. I just came from a
Sure.
big Bible Society conference. That word was used so many times. So I started asking people, how are you teaching it? And Michael, I got mostly blank stares back.
Mm.
The need is there. They're saying, we need this, we need this, we need this. Okay, how are you doing it? We need to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's a little bit of the scary part, right? That you mentioned earlier. It's like we weren't really taught to do that. So if we ask questions, we learn communally and we listen. The scriptures are our safety. They're, they hem us in on all sides. So if we can allow that to happen and let the Spirit guide the process for that group of people on that day in that place, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
It means for some of us, we got to get over those fears. I was really nervous in the beginning. I'm much more confident now. I can walk in and just say, okay, what's going to happen today? That's a really hard thing to do in the
It is.
beginning.
It is.
But
Yeah.
as with anything, experience proves to us over and over, God
Yeah.
knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and maybe just also, Ray, as I'm listening to you, sometimes we hold our vocation so tightly, right? We hold our roles as teachers, as administrators, as leaders of programs, and we hold it maybe too tightly sometimes.
Yeah.
And what would happen if we were to hold it with a lesser grip and allow the Lord to lead us and probe us and move us in different directions with some
Yeah.
of this. Let's talk about orality for some of those that might be listening and watching. They might think of the word orality, and it takes them perhaps to a village in Africa or
Mhm.
somewhere in Latin America or somewhere in Asia and they
Mhm.
or somewhere outside of their own context, and they
Yeah.
think, well, orality is something that happens in these other cultures, but not in my culture. Okay. So,
Yeah.
do we have orality going on around us, that might not always be in majority world contexts and settings?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. Yes, is the short answer. We're all oral learners. If you're hearing,
Yes,
you're an oral learner. You
yes,
start that way. You want something, you don't have the words for it, you cry. Mom comes and rescues you and figures out what you want. And so we learn and we communicate orally before we ever start writing.
mm,
And so at times we push into one style of learning and leave things weaker on the other side. Um, for a lot of us, what is orality? Orality shows up when we give a speech
yeah,
in class, when we're in speech class, when we're in homiletics and we have to do our sermons. That's orality.
yeah,
There are some communicators, some pastors, preachers who are so good at the various aspects of oral communication because they say things in a rhythmic way and in well thought out ways that just stick with you. Those
yeah.
are great examples of orality.
They're good storytellers,
They're
right?
great storytellers. So
Yes.
many times on Sunday, what do people remember? They don't remember necessarily the 3 points. They remember that story in the middle that was so good because it was
Yeah,
about that girl that did that thing that nobody thought was possible. And
yeah,
at lunchtime, they're talking about it because it's like, oh my gosh, that was so cool.
yeah,
Because that's what sticks. So
yeah,
learning from that is important to us. Um, Most of our current college students prefer oral or video means. That's why YouTube is such a highly used search engine.
yes,
I think we all do it at different times. It's like, how do I do this? We go watch somebody else do it, or we listen to their explanations. Things that go viral. Why do they go viral? Because it's short form. It's interesting to us. We can see it and hear it, and we get it. We go, yeah, that makes some connection to us.
yeah,
So they
yeah,
go. With that leads me to one of the greatest motivators for me. It's the empowerment that comes when people learn that they can communicate God's truths in a way that is natural to them without having to learn some other language, some other learning style, something that's hard or seemingly unattainable for them, that within what they already have, what God has already given them, they now can be part of the body of Christ, participating and sharing. Michael, it's this vast, almost unused army that God has around the entire globe that we have yet to fully engage. When those people are empowered and equipped, they just go. We never have to tell people in other places like that, you should go share a story because they already did last night before they came back for day 2. In the States, we have to encourage them. Yeah, no, really, you can tell a story. Oh, where would I do that? How would I do that? Is it okay? Do I have permission? Yeah.
yeah,
We
yeah,
don't have those conversations anywhere else. So the
yeah.
empowerment is massive. It's
That's great, right? That's
mm,
great. You touched a moment ago um, about you mentioned all kinds of media. Of course, podcasts is another oral way of learning and interacting with others. But you mentioned that younger leaders, next generation of leaders, and in classrooms, and they have a larger preference for oral type of means for us to communicate with them. And I think there's something to be said there in terms of the future of
mhm,
theological education, being sensitive to that along the way. As we begin to think about closing our time together here, Ray, what would you like for people to most understand
mhm.
about orality?
Sounds like an easy question. Kind of hard, but
Yeah, yeah,
because as you said, for the most part, once people understand what orality is, they think it's over there for them.
yes, yes,
The reality is the engagement process, the highly interactive engagement process we use works for everybody. So right now we have groups in Europe, we have groups in Japan who are loving this. They're highly literate. But
Yes.
what they're finding is that the community that it's building, as they get to know each other, as they're answering open-ended questions, they're learning about the stories, they're learning about God, they're learning about each other in community. That's the part that they're
Mhm.
telling us. This is
Mhm.
serving us in this way. This is helping us build community. In Japan, there's not that many believers. And
Right.
like I said, they're highly literate, but when they try to start a Bible study, that, well, I don't know who to ask. I don't know that many people that believe. But by doing this process, they find, hey, we can do this. We can talk together, whether we believe the same or not right now. But in building those relationships, they're finding hope and encouragement. That's a global also.
Sure.
So not just
Sure.
that stories stick, but people need community, whether it's digital, whether
Mm.
it's the next generation that are AI natives and digital natives and all that other stuff. But we're wired that way. God wired us
Yeah.
for story. He wired us for community. And for us who are involved in theological education, anything that we can do that will put those together and build another platform for people to engage with God's word, we're going to win.
Yeah, that's great. And so, as you think about the future of theological education and the future of learning and teaching, um, looking ahead a little bit, perhaps, Ray, 5 years, 10 years down the road, uh, what do you envision? What do you most hope for, in with regard to the role of orality, story, and in learning and teaching, and in Bible colleges and seminaries and other ways of doing theological education? What do you imagine down the road for us?
I'm a futurist, so I like this.
Yeah.
uh, so much more dispersed, much more contextualized. It won't
Mm,
just be we need to do it. We'll have many, many examples of it happening. And we'll be at a place where we're okay with it.
yeah,
We,
there you
we
go.
know one size doesn't fit all, but it makes us nervous to try to express that because we were taught a certain way. So 10 years from now, we're going to be comfortable with it. Our schools will
Mm,
look differently. It'll be learning laboratories in a lot of
mm,
places. The scripture and the spirit still are the boundaries guiding all of that. The professors are the facilitators. The students are the learners who are
yeah,
also helping to make this process happen. And in some cases, they're going to be from all around the globe gathering on their devices. In some cases, the professor may be the one that's on the device and everybody else is in a room or under a tree or wherever.
yeah.
But the connections that are possible now are only going to multiply. And so as we become more comfortable with seeing the fruit of contextualization, I think that'll cause more of it to happen.
Ray, thank you so much. And you know that vision, that view of theological education down the roads at some point in time, brother, I'm with you with that, and I look forward to seeing that unfold as well. And Ray, thank you for being on the podcast with me today, and really sincerely appreciate you as a colleague, as a global friend, and everything else. But the your insight today, and I felt like we could be keep going for another hour, right? But
Easily.
yeah, easily. But thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me on this podcast today, Ray.
Let me add one final thought, Michael.
Sure.
As I thought about, what gives me hope for the future of
Yeah,
theological education,
sure.
you do.
Oh,
Honestly, the things that you've been able to do to lead conversations through ISET, a number of people who are listening, who are
yeah.
engaging in conversations, this gives me hope. And so thank you for how you're
Thank
leading us, how you're
brother.
helping us and challenging us. Um, these things don't happen without somebody pointing the way. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ray. Thanks. You're a good friend. I appreciate that, brother. So, thank you for joining us again. And those of you that have been watching this podcast, hopefully there's something that during this conversation with Ray stirs something in you. And go ahead and share
Mm.
this with others. And feel free to subscribe to the channel because we need to be doing this together in community. So your
Mhm.
presence, your participation, your engagement with this podcast is of high value to us. So please go ahead and subscribe. And because together as a community, I envision us reimagining theological education together.